Trep finds a distraught and disoriented Takeshi on the floor and drags him back to his hideout. Takeshi immediately starts thinking how he can contact Quellcrist again and try and help her. He remembers Hideki's last words, "Forgive her," and knows that there is something causing all of this. He knows there is still hope for her. They need to find her as soon as they can. Poe settles them down and tells them that Quellcrist was upstairs. She had come there as soon as she had finished with her murder spree. Takeshi quickly goes up to meet her. Elsewhere, Carrera's Evergreen Command finally arrives. He had managed to clone Takeshi's body and had stored it for over 300 years for a day just like this one. For who better to kill Takeshi Kovacs than Takeshi himself? The sleeve is from the time when Takeshi was in the Envoy and still in his original Japanese form. Carrera tells the clone that he was the real Kovacs and had been on ice for the last 300 years, while his clone, who had escaped, had betrayed the Protectorate and joined Quellcrist to create a name for himself. The most heinous of his crimes was killing his sister. The clone Takeshi Prime, is convinced. Such is the power of Carrera's words. After all, he was the man who had raised Takeshi when he was young. Carrera gives command on the Wedge forces to go and kill the real Takeshi and reclaim his position back in the world. In Takeshi's hideout, Takeshi confronts Quellcrist, who is weeping in the bathroom. Guilty about what she had done, with or without interest, she believes that she is beyond hope, and it's best that Takeshi leave her be. Takeshi, however, refuses to leave her alone. He remembers that Hideki had told him to forgive her, and he knows Hideki doesn't use words lightly. At the bar below, after realizing that Quellcrist was going after the founders of the world, killing them one by one, Poe decides to go to find Harlan Conrad, Danica's father, to know the reason behind this. He believes that this would be of some help to fix the situation Quellcrist was in. He bids Dig farewell and, despite her protest, heads to the one place where Conrad was rumored to have taken refuge, the Garden of Jack Soul Brazil. After assigning Takeshi Prime his mission, Carrera approaches Danica with a video footage the Wedge had managed to retrieve from Dugan's death spot. It was footage showing Quellcrist Falconer leaving the premises. He threatens her that if this gets out, her Senate would remove her from her position, and that would make a hell of a mess for her father's reputation. Danica tells them to prevent the tape from leaking and deal with Quellcrist as fast as they can. Takeshi Prime goes to the death scene of Hideki and is confronted by Yukido, who doesn't know who the guy before him is. The Yakuza bluntly tells the man to get the hell out of his property. He was angered by the death of his great-grandfather and knew that it was Takeshi who did it. As the fake Takeshi inquires of the location of Takeshi, Yukido tells him that he doesn't know where the man is, but the news would reach Takeshi Prime as soon as Yukido had killed the real one. Moments later, the footage of Quellcrist leaving the crime site has already found its way to Joshua Kemp, the leader of the Quellcrist Rebellion. He creates a live telecast on TV, announcing how Quellcrist Falconer had returned, and she made the first blow. This meant that the Quellcrist Rebellion would no longer hold the ceasefire, as their leader had already arrived delivering the message of death. Takeshi, Trep, and Quellcrist also see this telecast, and Takeshi decides to go to Kemp for refuge. The rebellion was the only hope that they had left. Trep decides to tag along so that she makes sure Takeshi holds up to his promise of helping her find her brother, or help her find someone who could find her brother. The three decide to take the mining route to reach the stronghold, the base of the rebellion. But for that, they need to get some mining equipment. Trep knows a place. Just as the trio had left, Yukido barges in with his Yakuza goons and demands to Dig to reveal Takeshi's location. But before he could pry further, he is shot down by Takeshi Prime. This guy is a badass. He demands Dig to hand over the information, but she repeatedly denies knowing Takeshi Kovacs. Takeshi Prime uses the AI codes built to control the AI and forces her to reveal everything. And yet again, Dig holds firm. She wanted to save them at any cost, but Takeshi was smart. He simply asked her who had given her the last command and uses that information to track down where the real Takeshi had gone. Takeshi, Trip, and Quellcrest go to a nearby mining store and start stealing the equipment there. The store turns out to be belonging to Trip's father. He had a sour relationship with Trip, but helps her nonetheless. The man had been on ice for several years of his life and had been absent for Trip and her brother. This was his way of repaying her. Before the trio leave, he tells Trip that her brother had joined the Quellcrest rebellion, and he was probably there with Joshua. Trip is a little upset because she had expected him to contact her, but she now has hope that she would meet her brother again. Elsewhere, Poe arrives at the Garden of Jack's Soul, Brazil, a safe haven built for people who had renounced their mortal happiness and wanted to live a more tranquil life. He realizes, however, that the whole place was actually an AI-generated place, meant to show the people there what they had wanted to see. He realizes that Conrad was never here to begin with. It was all a ruse to trick the entire universe of him being rid of his ambitions. Something much deeper was going on. Takeshi Prime and the Wedges reach Trep's father's store. The other Wedge commander questions Trep's father, while Takeshi Prime goes around investigating the place. Trep's father does not reveal any information during the questioning, but Takeshi Prime already knows where they were meant to head next. Takeshi Prime immediately kills Trep's father, going as far as destroying his stack. He then commands the forces to head to the mining route leading to the stronghold. In the Harlan governor's office, Danica calls for an emergency meeting of the Senate, hoping that she could persuade them to act against the rebellion. The Senate knows that they would be the first to die if Quellcrest Falconer was truly alive, and going after Meths, and the Senate unanimously votes for Danica to have supreme control over all forces, including the Senate, until the matter is closed down. Carrera watches in disbelief as the Senate are immediately captured by Danica, who has now come to hold all power in Harlan. He realizes that she was working with Kemp and was the one who had leaked the video herself, so that she could manipulate the Senate into voting for her. Now that Danica is the boss of all forces, including the Wedge, she orders Carrera to capture Quellcrest's stack and kill Takeshi on sight. Just before Takeshi, Trep and Quellcrest head into the mines. Quellcrest secretly hands Trep a poison gun to kill her if she ever loses control again. She had to stop herself, and this was the only way. However, even though on the way, Quellcrest loses control several times, Trep hesitates to shoot her. The trio travel through the dark mines to reach a room from Quellcrest's nightmares. Quellcrest feels that this was the place in her mind that made her feel trapped, but for some reason, it was real. She starts losing control again after seeing the room, and this time, Trep almost shoots her, but Takeshi stops Trep in time. He throws away her gun and tells her to wait while he goes out to send a signal to Kemp. Outside, Takeshi encounters Takeshi Prime, who had wandered away from his team, and the two men meet head-on. The two were evenly matched, but Takeshi grows overconfident, thinking that his experiences would surely beat the training of Takeshi Prime. Just as he felt that he had the upper hand, Takeshi Prime throws him over the adjoining cliff. Takeshi was presumably dead. After waiting, Takeshi had been gone for some while. Trep decides to go and check on him, while Quellcrest reaches the lake next to Stronghold and starts regaining all her memories back. Takeshi Prime watches her from afar and contacts his team. As the Wedge forces surround the perimeter, Takeshi Prime decides to go and manipulate Quellcrest into handing over the weapon, and then he would shoot her. Carrera reminds Takeshi that this was how his clone had been led astray, and so asks him to stick to the plan. But Takeshi Prime is adamant in his decision. He approaches Quellcrest as the real Takeshi to find out about the weapon. Quellcrest, who is still fuzzy on her memories, mistakes him for the real Takeshi and takes him inside the stronghold. promising to show him the weapon instead of the weapon itself. Quellcrest first shows him the location where she had been trapped for years. Apparently, she had been trapped in this place for over 300 years by Ree, Takeshi's sister, and her mind had gone fuzzy during all this. Her personality had split, causing her to lose control and go on murderous rampages. She shows the recordings of how Ree had managed to clone her stack and sleeve and trap her in the flesh, letting her mind erode under the roots of the stronghold tree. In his ear, Takeshi Prime hears Carrera warn him against the manipulations Quellcrest could pull off. Takeshi Prime is slowly getting intrigued by the truth. Elsewhere, Trep finds Takeshi subconsciously hanging on the edge of the hill and manages to rescue him. Takeshi's high-tech wedge sleeve had given him a subconscious reflex that had managed to save his life. The two quickly get back to the stronghold, making swift work of 2 of the 5 wedge forces placed in the perimeter, just as they were finished with the 2. However, they are surrounded by 3 of the other members. The wedge forces wait to get approval to kill Takeshi, but before they can get word back, they are shot down by Joshua Kemp and his men. Quellcrest then leads Takeshi Prime to a deep cavern where she had hid the weapon, and on their way, Takeshi Prime starts realizing just how close Takeshi was with Quellcrest. He had shared the most delicate and personal details with her, and Takeshi Prime is certain that Takeshi must have trusted her a lot. Just then, he receives word that the mission had been compromised. Takeshi Prime turns to finish his job, but finds that Quellcrest had realized the moment she saw his eyes that he was not her Takeshi Kovacs. He was not the man she loved. The two quickly get into a scuffle, and Quellcrest, of all odds, manages to subdue Takeshi Prime. Just as Kemp arrives alongside Trep, Takeshi and the rebel forces, Carrera and Danica, who were remotely watching all this unfold, are frustrated that their efforts had come to naught. Danica, in particular, is extremely angry and decides that the wedge was no longer helpful in this case and calls in her own soldiers to make a move on the stronghold. Carrera, however, still believes that Takeshi Prime would pull through in the mission he was assigned with. Takeshi Prime, and Trep are taken captive by Kemp. He wants to make sure that Quellcrest was the real one before he helped them for real. Quellcrest is called upon to face the assertment challenge as her friends await. This test would make certain that Quellcrest was the real one and not someone wearing her sleeve. The test is based on how she can answer events that question her morality and motives. This was a test of the envoys that was done for centuries. Quellcrest passes the envoy test and regains the trust of Krimp and his followers. While the rebellion rejoices in return of their leader, Takeshi talks with Takeshi Prime and makes him realize how Carrera or Jaeger had manipulated them since childhood and made them believe that getting praise for killing was love. The Protectorate had betrayed them. They were the ones who had sold their sister to the Yakuza and made them believe it was for the better of the universe. It was all a lie. Takeshi had been forced to kill his father and then his sister, all because of manipulations by the Protectorate and Jaeger. He tells Takeshi Prime how their sister had died. She had wanted to die from his hands, and she did. She had died in peace. Trep, on the other hand, confronts Kemp if he knew her brother Anil. But Kemp has no idea where or who Anil was. As they are talking, Trep notices several stacks hung around Kemp's neck. One of them was Anil's. Kemp notices her acting weird and asks her if she is okay. She asks for her transmitter to change her coils. Using the transmitter, Trep discovers that Kemp had never really gotten their signal, which means that someone had tipped him off their location. Kemp was lying to them. Trep quickly tells this to Quellcrest, who has but one plan: shoot to kill. Quellcrest immediately goes ahead and points her gun straight to Kemp's face. Kemp tries resisting at first, but Takeshi takes care of the few men loyal to him. The rest of the rebellion still had their loyalty devoted to Quellcrest. Kemp reveals that he was working for Danica all along. There was no rebellion. It was all an elaborate lie to get Danica into supreme power. The group take him prisoner and head outside to escape. Outside, the stronghold is surrounded by the forces sent by Danica. Danica, who had been watching the action unfold, notices two Kovacs before her. As the forces surround Quellcrest and the group, Kemp rushes forward, claiming he works for Danica. Carrera realizes that Danica had been running all this from within. The ceasefire, the war, the whole rebellion. He immediately reaches to call the Protectorate, but Danica arrests Carrera for double-sleeve violation. Carrera had double-sleeved a highly dangerous criminal, and that would cost him a lifetime of punishment. Kemp is shot down by Danica's forces, as he is of no use now, but the others resist them. Quellcrest starts having the same nightmares again, and suddenly, the Protectorate soldiers sent by Danica are slaughtered by angel fire while they close in on the group. None of them remain. Subscribe and hit that like button to help grow our channel, and don't forget to click the notification icon so you won't miss any of our new videos. Thanks for watching.